There are fewer actresses working today who are worthier of the title chameleon than Julianne Moore. Her career has spanned decades and crossed over into various genres. True, she isn't always in worthy movies, but who is? Julianne Moore has constantly proven her acting talents. And so here, as of 2018, are my 5 favorite Julianne Moore performances. Number 5. The Kids Are Alright. This is one of those movies which rides that line between comedy and drama. Julianne Moore plays Jules, who lives with her partner as they raise their 2 kids. Things go awry when the kids independently discover their biological father. He enters the family's life and causes disruptions that I won't get into here. When it comes to Moore, it's a great example of one of her strongest acting strengths. Jules is a good person with flaws that lead her to doing bad things. Moore plays this kind of character well, and while this movie is much more lighthearted than some other films on this list, Moore still conveys a very grounded and serious tone when the drama calls for it. She balances comedy and drama in that effortless way that we've come to expect from her. Number 4. Boogie Nights. Here comes another film which rides that fine line of comedy and drama with a movie about the porn industry of the 1970s. This film stars a plethora of people who live, work, or profit from said industry. Moore's character is named Amber Waves, and she's a leading lady in porn films. She's also locked in a vicious custody battle for the right to be with her child, and the film takes a good look at the prejudice aimed towards workers in the adult entertainment industry. Bereft of her real child, she becomes a sort of mother figure to some of the other characters who work alongside her in the industry. It's a bizarre situation which works perfectly in the context of the story. I've noticed that whenever the mainstream media refers to the adult entertainment industry, people involved in it are usually just cheap punchlines, or they're beaten with morality sticks. This film works so well because it transcends the world of porn and really looks at the struggles of these people who at the end of the day are just trying to live their lives and deal with their own issues like everyone else. And so Moore gives us a very earnest performance in this film, portraying a woman trying to live a normal life in, some might say, abnormal settings. Number 3. The Big Lebowski. Many people, including my brother, will say that The Big Lebowski is the crowning achievement of the Coen brothers. I personally don't think it's their best, but it's definitely up there. One thing it does especially well is a weird battle of the sexes, where the men are idiots or weak, yet still try to speak loud and look big. Meanwhile, the women effortlessly push the men around and dominate them in a number of ways. In the case of Maud Lebowski, she is arguably the most powerful person in the film, not just through her position as an artiste, but also through the way she's so confident and self-assured. Unlike her deeply insecure and vain father, Maud has nothing to prove. She just is. And watching the dude try to interact with her makes for some of the film's highlights. He's blundering through a conspiracy completely over his head. Maud, meanwhile, helps him when she feels like it, but she's actually interested in another topic that I will not reveal in case you haven't seen that film. The revelation is it's too good to spoil. I think what makes Moore's performance work so well is the fact that Maud is standing aloof in the middle of a bunch of clowns, but then she chases her own bizarre goal with all the casual seriousness of a completely different film. And ironically, it's totally fitting to the movie's tone. Number 2. Chloe. Yes, I'm predictable. Sorry. But Chloe really is one of Adam Egoyan's best films. It's a thriller which is concerned with the themes of fidelity, trust, privacy, truth, and love. Catherine is a woman with a successful career, but her family life is driving her to depression. Her teenage son has basically cut her out of his life, and she's convinced that her husband is having an affair. So she hires a call girl named Chloe to try and seduce her husband to test his infidelity. Or fidelity, whichever one is the correct term. What follows is an intriguing story with twists and turns that honestly had me really surprised the first time I saw the movie. And while you could argue that Amanda Seyfried was the standout star, the main character continues to be Catherine, and Julianne Moore carries this film on her shoulders. She does an incredible job portraying the agonized emotions of a doctor whose logic and reason is unable to understand the mysteries behind the logic. Because she feels so alone, she turns to another woman who's also alone, but dwells in the world of half-truths and seduction. And Catherine is totally unprepared to deal with what happens next. And number 1, Magnolia. As far as I'm concerned, working with Paul Thomas Anderson was one of the best career decisions that Julianne Moore has ever made. And Magnolia is still the best movie that Anderson has made so far. Just like Boogie Nights, it follows a large cast of quirky characters as their lives spiral out of control. But the focus isn't just their individual concerns, but the way that they're all connected to each other. And one way or another, whether they know it or not, they are deeply affected by each other. And if they actually got out of their own heads, they would find a whole bunch of people dealing with the exact same problems that they are. It kind of reminds me of Robert Altman's Shortcuts, which, interestingly, also featured Julianne Moore. But I like this film better. Magnolia's focus on the characters allows for some incredible acting moments from people like Tom Cruise or William H. Macy. But for me, it's Julianne Moore who stands out the most. Linda Partridge is on a frantic mission throughout the story. I won't talk about all the details, but this film allows for my favorite Julianne Moore moments. The pharmacy scene alone is the scene which I think of whenever I think of Julianne Moore. The way she handles that scene is just masterful. She's restraining a complete nervous breakdown, which only becomes aggravated by the intrusive questions and judgmental attitudes of the pharmacists. But from their perspective, their sense of suspicion is completely warranted. This situation has a huge risk of going over the top or too far. But Moore knows exactly what she's doing, and so she walks the tightrope all the way to the end of the scene. Of all her roles, this one is the most memorable. And it's also my favorite Julianne Moore performance.